out! Get out of my house!
A woman's scream tore through the marble hallway like shattered glass. The triplets, Chitty, Kelechi, and Samto, stood frozen on the grand staircase, their small bodies trembling as their latest nanny hurled insults at the eldest boy. "You spoiled, ungrateful brat. I didn't come here to be disrespected by a 6-year-old. Chitty's face crumpled, tears streaming down his cheeks. I just asked if you knew how to make mummy's pancakes. Your mother is dead, and I'm not her replacement." The slap of her hand against the marble counter echoed like thunder. Welcome to TJAY Story, where every tale touches the soul. If you're new here, subscribe now, because what you're about to witness will change how you see love, loss, and second chances forever. Felix Toju's estate in Banana Island was not a home. It was a mausoleum wrapped in luxury, 32 rooms, 12 bathrooms, an infinity pool that reflected nothing but emptiness, and silence so thick it could suffocate you. 8 months. That's how long it had been since laughter died in that house. That's how long it had been since Victoria Toju, radiant, warm, irreplaceable Victoria, had collapsed in the garden while playing with her sons. Brain aneurysm. No warning, no goodbye, just gone. And Felix Toju, the billionaire who commanded boardrooms and bent markets to his will, became a ghost in his own house. He moved through the halls like smoke, present but intangible, there but not really. His eyes, once sharp and calculating, now stared at nothing for hours. The triplets learned to be quiet. They learned that Daddy doesn't laugh anymore. They learned that asking about Mummy made the adults cry or leave. So they stopped asking. They stopped playing. They stopped being children. 14 nannies had come and gone. Some lasted a week. Others barely made it through a day. The boys weren't difficult. They were grieving. And grief in children looks like anger, silence, questions at 2 a.m., tears over pancakes that don't taste right. No one could handle it. No one wanted to handle it. Until her. Felix sat in his Maybach, stuck in Lagos traffic on Admiralty Way, and felt nothing. The city roared around him, Danfo buses, hawkers, construction, life, but inside his car, inside his chest, there was only static. His phone buzzed. Mrs. Adami, the housekeeper. "Sir, the new nanny started today. Miss Vivian Michael." He didn't respond. What was the point? She'd be gone by Friday, just like the others. They all came with bright smiles and professional credentials, and they all left in tears or frustration. His children were labeled difficult. His children were broken. He was broken. God had taken the only person who knew how to hold them all together, and Felix had stopped praying the day they buried her. It was 6:47 p.m. when Felix's driver pulled through the gate. Felix stepped out of the car with his suit jacket slung over one arm, his jaw tight, his mind already rehearsing the conversation he'd have with the recruitment agency tomorrow. They'd sent another failure. He could feel it. The house was supposed to be silent. It was always silent. But as he pushed open the front door, laughter. Felix froze. Not polite laughter, not nervous laughter, not the kind of laughter people fake around children. Real laughter, wild, unbridled, the kind that comes from the belly and fills every corner of a room. His son's laughter. For a moment, Felix thought he was hallucinating. The grief therapist had warned him about this, auditory memories, the brain trying to cope by recreating lost sounds. But no, it was real. Again, Auntie Vivian, do the horse sound. Felix's feet moved on their own. He followed the sound through the foyer, past the living room, into the large play area that had become a storage room for untouched toys. And there, in the center of the room, was a woman on her hands and knees. A woman he'd never seen before. She was brown-skinned, her natural hair pulled into a thick bun, wearing a simple blue dress and no shoes, her feet bare against the carpet. And on her back, clinging to her like she was the most magnificent creature in the world, was Samto, the youngest, screaming with delight. "Nay, nay," she whinnied, bucking playfully as Samto shrieked with laughter. Chitty and Kelechi were on the floor, rolling with giggles, begging for their turn. Me next, me next. Felix's throat closed. His eyes burned. He hadn't heard that sound since before. The woman, Vivian, glanced up mid-gallop and saw him. Her smile faltered for only a second before she gently lowered Samto to the floor and stood, brushing off her knees. "Mr. Toju," she said quietly with no panic, no guilt. "Welcome home." The boys turned. "Daddy." They ran to him, their faces alight, and for the first time in 8 months, they hugged him without sadness in their eyes. Felix stood there, stiff, unable to move. He looked at Vivian over their heads. She didn't look away. She didn't apologize for the noise. She didn't explain herself. She simply nodded, calm, certain, present. And Felix, who hadn't cried since the funeral, felt something crack open inside his chest. He turned and walked away without a word. The question that haunted him. That night, Felix sat in his study with a glass of whiskey he didn't drink. 14 nannies. Therapists, pediatricians, child psychologists. Toys worth millions. None of it worked. And yet this woman, this stranger, walked into his house and brought his sons back to life in less than a day. How? He opened his laptop and pulled up her application file. Vivian Michael, age 29, 5 years of childcare experience. References were glowing. Background check, clean. Nothing extraordinary. Except, at the bottom of her handwritten cover letter, in looping script, one line stood out. "I understand grief. I won't run from it." Felix stared at those words until his vision blurred. He heard Samto's laughter echoing in his mind. He saw the way Vivian had looked at him, not with pity, not with judgment. With recognition. Like she knew. Felix closed the laptop and whispered into the darkness. "Who are you, Vivian Michael? Who is Vivian Michael, and why did she succeed where everyone else failed?" Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if this story already has your heart racing, smash that like button and subscribe to TJAY's story. Felix woke at 5:30 a.m. to the sound of humming. Not singing, humming, low, rhythmic, coming from somewhere downstairs. He sat up in bed, disoriented. For 8 months, mornings in this house had been silent except for Mrs. Adami's careful footsteps and the occasional clink of dishes. The boys never woke early anymore. They had learned that mornings were heavy, that Daddy didn't want to be disturbed, that breakfast was something you endured quietly before school. But this morning, something was different. Felix pulled on his robe and moved down the hallway. The humming grew louder as he descended the stairs. A gospel tune, old and familiar, the kind his own mother used to sing while cooking. He stopped at the kitchen doorway. Vivian stood at the stove, her back to him, barefoot again, her hair wrapped in a colorful head wrap. She was making something that smelled like heaven, akara, he realized. The scent of ground beans and pepper filled the air, and beside her on the counter sat a bowl of fresh pap, still steaming. The triplets sat at the breakfast table, still in their pajamas, their eyes bright with something Felix hadn't seen in months. Anticipation. "Auntie Vivian," Kelechi asked, swinging his legs under the chair, "can we play the clapping game after breakfast? The one you taught us yesterday." Vivian flipped an akara in the hot oil, unbothered by the sizzle. "If you finish your food and brush your teeth properly, we'll play before school. Deal." "Deal," all 3 boys chorused. Felix's chest tightened. They were negotiating, smiling, participating in their own lives. Vivian turned to grab a plate and saw him. She didn't startle, didn't fumble. She simply nodded. "Good morning, sir. There's enough if you'd like to join them." It wasn't a question. It wasn't a demand. It was an invitation wrapped in quiet certainty, the kind that didn't leave room for refusal. Felix found himself sitting at the table. He found himself eating akara that tasted exactly like his childhood. He found himself watching his sons laugh over who had the biggest piece. And Vivian didn't hover. She didn't ask if everything was okay. She didn't try to force conversation. She simply moved through the space like water, present, necessary, unobtrusive. When Chitty accidentally knocked over his cup of water, he froze, his face going pale. Felix remembered why. 3 nannies ago, a woman had screamed at him for spilling juice, called him clumsy, threatened to tell his father. But Vivian... She grabbed a towel, wiped it up, and said, "No wahala, it's just water. Even the sky spills rain and nobody vex." Chitty's shoulders dropped. He smiled. Felix realized something profound in that moment. Vivian wasn't trying to fix his sons. She was simply being present with them. There was no force, no professional distance, no pity. Just presence. Over the next few days, Felix watched her. He told himself it was to ensure she was competent, that his sons were safe. But the truth, he was trying to understand what made her different. The therapist had asked questions. How does that make you feel? Can you draw your feelings? The previous nannies had imposed structure. No crying. Big boys don't cry. Let's distract you with TV. Vivian did neither. When Samto cried because he missed his mother's bedtime stories, Vivian didn't distract him. She sat beside him on the floor, held his small hand, and said, "Tell me about your mummy's stories. What was your favorite one?" And Samto talked. For 30 minutes, he talked about how Victoria did different voices, how she made the lion sound, how she always kissed his forehead at the end. Vivian listened to every word. She didn't say, "She's in a better place." She didn't say, "You'll feel better soon." She said, "Your mummy sounds like she was magic. And you know what? That magic is still inside you. Every time you remember her stories, she's right there with you." Samto hugged her so tightly, Felix thought the boy would never let go. The library ate tea midnight. Felix couldn't sleep. Again. He wandered downstairs toward his library, seeking the company of books that no longer brought him comfort. But as he approached, he saw light spilling from under the door. He pushed it open quietly. Vivian sat curled in the leather armchair near the window, holding one of Victoria's books, a collection of Igbo folktales Victoria had loved reading to the boys. She wasn't reading it. She was simply holding it, staring out at the dark garden. "I'm sorry," she said without turning. "I should have asked permission." Felix stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "No, it's fine." Silence settled between them, not awkward, but heavy with unspoken things. Finally, Felix spoke. "My wife loved that book." "I know," Vivian said softly. "Chitty told me. He said she used to read it every Sunday night." Felix's jaw tightened. "They talk to you about her?" "All the time." "They don't talk to me about her." Vivian turned to look at him then, her eyes steady and impossibly kind. "That's because you're afraid of her name, sir, and children can feel fear. They think if they mention her, they'll hurt you more, so they stay quiet." The words hit Felix like a punch. "I'm not afraid." "You are," Vivian said gently. "And it's okay to be afraid. Grief is terrifying. But your sons need to know that saying mummy won't break you, because right now, they think love is something that hurts people, and that's the real tragedy." Felix sank into the chair across from her, his hands trembling. "How do you know all this?" Vivian smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Because I've been where you are." Before Felix could ask what she meant, Samto's voice called from upstairs. "Auntie Vivian." She stood immediately, placing the book back on the shelf with reverence. "That's my cue. Good night, Mr. Toju." She left the room, and Felix sat alone in the dark, feeling something he hadn't felt in 8 months. Hope. Dangerous, fragile hope. 3 weeks later. The house was different now. Not healed, not repaired, but breathing. The boys played again. They asked questions again. They said Victoria's name at the dinner table, and Felix, slowly, painfully, learned not to flinch. Vivian never pushed. She simply created space for grief to exist alongside joy, for memory to live beside the present. And Felix began to notice things. The way Vivian's smile never quite reached her eyes. The way she flinched when the boys hugged her too tightly. The way she disappeared to her room every night at exactly 9:00 p.m. and didn't emerge until morning. There was a sadness in her that mirrored his own. A wound that hadn't healed. One night at 2:47 a.m., Felix woke to a sound that stopped his heart. Crying. Soft, broken, muffled, but unmistakable. He followed the sound down the hall, past the boys' rooms, toward the guest wing where Vivian stayed. Her door was slightly ajar. And through the gap, Felix saw her sitting on the floor, clutching something silver in her hands, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. Felix should have walked away. It was the decent thing to do. Respect her privacy, pretend he hadn't seen, let her keep her grief hidden the way he'd kept his. But he couldn't, because he recognized that sound. That was the sound of someone drowning alone in the dark. That was the sound he made in the shower where no one could hear. That was the sound of agony that had no language, no release, no end. He knocked softly. The crying stopped immediately. "Miss Vivian." His voice was barely a whisper. "May I come in?" Silence. "Then, sir, I'm fine. Please just—" "No, you're not." He pushed the door open. Vivian sat on the floor beside her bed, still fully dressed, her knees pulled to her chest. Her face was wet with tears, her eyes red and swollen. In her trembling hands was a silver locket, small and delicate, worn from years of being held too tightly. She looked up at him, not with embarrassment, but with exhaustion. The kind of exhaustion that comes from pretending to be whole when you're shattered inside. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean to wake you. I'm usually quieter." Felix's heart cracked. Usually, she did this every night. He sat down on the floor across from her, not caring about propriety or boundaries. "Who's in the locket?" Vivian's hands closed around it protectively, but she didn't look away. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then, with a voice that sounded like breaking glass. Her name was Alice. Was. Vivian nodded, fresh tears spilling. "My daughter, she was 3 years old. 3 years, 2 months, and 11 days. The air left Felix's lungs. "She drowned," Vivian continued, her voice flat, mechanical, like she'd said these words so many times they'd lost meaning. "We were at a family party in Lecky. I turned away for 2 minutes, 2 minutes to get her juice, and the pool." She couldn't finish. She didn't need to. Felix understood. God, he understood. "I tried to save her. I jumped in. I pulled her out. I did CPR until the ambulance came, but it was too late." Vivian's voice cracked. "The doctors said she'd been underwater too long. Brain damage. They put her on life support for 4 days before we had to decide." "Vivian." "My husband blamed me." She laughed bitterly through her tears. "He never said it out loud, but I saw it in his eyes every day. Why didn't you watch her? Why did you turn away? Why did you let our baby die?" He filed for divorce 6 months later, said he couldn't look at me anymore without seeing her. Felix felt rage rise in his chest, not at Vivian, but at a man cruel enough to abandon the woman carrying the same grief he carried. "That's not your fault," Felix said fiercely. "It was an accident, a terrible, horrible accident. You didn't." "I know that in my head," Vivian interrupted, opening the locket. Inside was a tiny photo, a little girl with bright eyes and puffy cheeks wearing a yellow dress. "But my heart still believes I killed her, every single day." The room fell silent, except for the sound of their breathing. Then Felix spoke, his voice raw with his own pain. "Victoria collapsed in the garden. I was in a business meeting. She called me 3 times, 3 times, Vivian, and I silenced my phone because I was closing a deal." Vivian's eyes widened. "By the time I got home, she was already gone. The doctors said even if I'd answered, even if I'd rushed home, it wouldn't have mattered. The aneurysm was massive, but I still hear those missed calls ringing in my sleep. I still wonder if she was scared, if she called my name, if she thought I didn't care." He was crying now, too. Both of them, 2 broken people sitting on a floor in the middle of the night, finally honest about the weight they carried. The pain doesn't leave, does it? Vivian whispered. No, Felix said. It doesn't leave, it just changes shape. Some days it's sharp, some days it's dull, but it never disappears. Vivian clutched the locket to her chest. That's why I became a nanny. I thought if I could save other children, if I could keep them safe, keep them happy, maybe I could forgive myself. Maybe I could prove I'm not a monster. You're not a monster, Felix said firmly. You're a woman who loved her daughter so much that losing her broke you, and instead of staying broken, you chose to pour that love into other children. That's not weakness, Vivian, that's grace. She looked at him then, really looked, and something shifted between them. They weren't employer and employee anymore. They were two survivors, recognizing each other in the wreckage. Thank you, she whispered, for not running away when you saw me like this. Felix smiled sadly. You didn't run from my sons. The least I can do is not run from you. They sat together until dawn broke, not speaking, just present, two rivers of sorrow meeting in the quiet dark. 4 weeks later, Felix woke to a date on his phone that made his blood turn cold. May 12. Mother's Day. The day he'd been dreading since February. Last year, the boys had made cards for Victoria at school. She'd cried happy tears and taped them to the fridge. They stayed there for 3 months until Felix finally had the strength to take them down after she died. This year, Felix didn't know what would happen, and that terrified him. Can a child love two mothers without losing either one? Drop your answer below. Hit like if Chapter 3 broke your heart, and subscribe to TJAY story Mother's Day arrived like a funeral. Felix woke with his chest already tight, his throat already closed. This day, this cursed day, was supposed to be filled with breakfast in bed, handmade cards with crooked letters, Victoria's delighted laughter as the boys presented flowers picked from the garden. Instead, it was the first Mother's Day without her. He stayed in bed longer than usual, unable to face the empty space beside him, unable to go downstairs and pretend everything was fine. But at 7:43 a.m., there was a soft knock on his door. Daddy. Chitty's voice, small, hesitant. Felix forced himself to sit up. Come in. All 3 boys entered, and Felix's heart nearly stopped. They were holding cards. Handmade cards with crayons and glitter and stickers, just like the ones they used to make for Victoria. Felix's hands trembled as Chitty stepped forward. We made these at school. Miss Patricia said it was okay to make 2. 2, Felix's voice cracked. Kelechi nodded eagerly. 1 for Mummy in heaven, and 1 for Auntie Vivian. The room spun. Felix looked down at the card in Chitty's hands. On the front, in shaky letters, Happy Mother's Day, Auntie Vivian, you make us smile again. Inside, a drawing of Vivian on her hands and knees, the boys on her back, all of them laughing. Samto held up his card. This one is for Mummy. We're going to put it on her grave. Auntie Vivian said it's okay to love 2 people. She said love doesn't run out. Felix couldn't breathe, couldn't speak. Because they were right. Vivian had done what no therapist, no doctor, no expert could do. She'd given his sons permission to heal without guilt, to love the living without betraying the dead. Where is Auntie Vivian? Felix finally managed. In the kitchen. She said we should give you yours first. Felix stood, his legs unsteady. Come, let's go together. They drove to Ikoyi Cemetery in silence. Felix, Vivian, and the 3 boys. The morning air was thick with humidity and the scent of flowers from the nearby market. Victoria's grave sat beneath a flame tree just as she'd always wanted. Her headstone was simple, elegant. Victoria Kioma Toju, beloved wife, cherished mother, forever in our hearts. The boys placed their cards gently at the base of the stone, their small fingers tracing her name. Hi, Mummy, Chitty whispered. We miss you. Daddy says you can see us from heaven. We hope you like our cards. Kelechi added, we made one for Auntie Vivian too. Don't be mad, okay? She's really nice. She plays with us like you used to. Samto, the youngest, simply kissed his hand and pressed it to the stone. Felix watched, his vision blurred, as Vivian knelt beside Victoria's grave. She placed a single white rose on the ground and bowed her head. Felix moved closer, curious, and heard her whisper, "I promise I'm not trying to replace you. I promise I'm just trying to help them remember how to breathe. If you can hear me, thank you for trusting me with them. I won't let you down." Felix's knees almost gave out. This woman, this incredible, broken, beautiful woman, was asking permission from a ghost, honoring a woman she'd never met, acknowledging that she was walking on sacred ground. When Vivian stood, her eyes met his, and in that moment something unspoken passed between them. "I see you. I honor you. I'm not here to erase. I'm here to preserve." It started small. A photo. Someone at the cemetery, a distant relative, a nosy neighbor, someone with a phone and too much time, took a picture of Felix, Vivian, and the boys at Victoria's grave. By Monday afternoon, it was everywhere. Lagos is a city that thrives on gossip, and the wealthy are never allowed privacy. Within 48 hours, the photo had been shared across WhatsApp groups, Instagram pages, and blog comment sections. Billionaire Felix Toju moves on with new woman at his dead wife's grave. Shameless, the woman is even darker than a housemaid. You see how money makes them forget their own kind. That nanny is a witch. She's using juju to trap him and steal his sons. Victoria is not even cold in her grave, and this man is already parading another woman. Tufiakwa. The comments were vicious, ugly, soaked in colorism, classism, and assumptions. Felix saw them, tried to ignore them. But then the school called. "Mr. Toju, we need to discuss a delicate situation concerning your sons." Felix sat in the headmistress's office, his jaw clenched so tightly it ached. Mrs. Okafor, a woman in her 60s with silver hair and an air of practiced superiority, folded her hands on her desk. "Mr. Toju, I'm sure you're aware of the recent publicity surrounding your family." "I'm aware of gossip. What does that have to do with my son's education?" She cleared her throat. "Several parents have expressed concern. They feel that the presence of Miss Michael sends the wrong message to the children about propriety, about grief, about appropriate boundaries." Felix's blood turned to ice. Appropriate boundaries? "Your sons made Mother's Day cards for their nanny, Mr. Toju, in front of the entire class. It caused quite a disruption. Some parents felt it was disrespectful to your late wife's memory." "Disrespectful?" Felix's voice was dangerously quiet. "My sons are learning to heal. They're learning to love again, and you're telling me that's disrespectful." Mrs. Okafor shifted uncomfortably. "We have a reputation to uphold, and with all due respect, the optics of this situation." "The optics?" "A young, unmarried woman living in your home, spending that much time with your children, being honored as a maternal figure. People are talking, Mr. Toju, and we must consider." "Are my sons' fees paid?" "Well, yes, but are they excelling academically?" "Yes, they've actually improved significantly since." "Are they happy?" Mrs. Okafor paused. "That's not the point." "That's exactly the point." Felix stood, his voice like steel. "You keep my sons enrolled, or I will withdraw them and every donation I've ever made to this institution. And then I'll make sure every parent knows that this school punishes children for loving the people who save them." He walked out. But the damage was done. Felix came home to find Vivian packing. Her room was half empty, clothes folded neatly in a suitcase, her few belongings wrapped carefully in newspaper. "What are you doing?" Felix's voice thundered through the doorway. Vivian didn't look at him. "I'm leaving, sir. It's better this way." "Better for who?" "For you, for the boys, for everyone." Her hands shook as she folded a sweater. "I've seen the posts. I've heard what people are saying. They think I'm a gold digger, a homewrecker, a witch, and your sons are being punished because of me." "They're being punished because people are ignorant and cruel. That's not your fault." "It doesn't matter whose fault it is." Vivian finally turned, tears streaming down her face. Your sons deserve better than this. You deserve better than this. I'm nobody, Mr. Toju. I'm a woman with nothing. No family, no status, no name. And you're Felix Toju. You can't afford to be associated with someone like me. Someone like you. Felix crossed the room in 3 strides. Someone who brought my sons back to life. Someone who honored my wife's memory better than her own family. Someone who kneels at a stranger's grave and asks permission to love. Sir. Stop calling me sir, his voice cracked. Stop treating this like a job. Stop pretending you're just hired help. You're not Vivian, you haven't been for months. Vivian stared at him, stunned. Felix took a shaky breath. I need you, not as a nanny, not as an employee. I need you as the woman who taught my sons how to smile again, as the woman who sits with me in the dark and doesn't run, as the woman who understands grief and doesn't try to fix it. But the world, then my world needs to change. The words hung in the air like a vow. Vivian's suitcase slipped from her hands. The next morning, Felix Toju did something he'd never done before. He called a press conference. Not through a PR team, not through a carefully crafted statement. He sat in front of cameras, CNN, Channels TV, TVC, every major outlet in Lagos, and spoke from his chest. The studio was silent as he began. My name is Felix Toju. 8 months ago, I lost my wife, Victoria. She was my best friend, the love of my life, and the mother of my 3 sons. Her death nearly destroyed us. He paused, his hands steady on the table. For months, my sons stopped laughing. They stopped playing. They stopped being children. I hired 14 nannies. I paid for therapists, toys, trips, anything to bring them back. Nothing worked. Then a woman named Vivian Michael walked into my home. The mention of her name sent a ripple through the room. She didn't try to fix my sons. She didn't try to erase their mother's memory. She simply sat with them in their pain. She listened. She honored Victoria's name instead of running from it, and slowly my sons began to heal. Felix leaned forward, his eyes fierce. And for this, she's been called a witch, a gold digger, a homewrecker. She's been accused of using juju to manipulate my family. My sons have been humiliated at school, all because a broken woman dared to help another broken family find peace. The room was dead silent. Let me be clear, Vivian Michael is not my girlfriend. She's not trying to replace my wife. She is a woman who lost her own daughter and turned her grief into grace. She is the reason my sons remember how to smile. And if Lagos society cannot accept that, if my business partners, my friends, my church cannot accept that a black woman with no connections can be valuable, can be honored, can be loved. He paused. Then they don't belong in my life. The room erupted. 3 days later, Felix walked into an emergency board meeting at Toju Industries. The 12 board members sat rigid, their faces carved from stone. Chief Ademola, the eldest, spoke first. Felix, we need to discuss your recent public statement. What about it? You've put this company at risk. Our shareholders are concerned. Our partners are reconsidering contracts. You cannot publicly align yourself with a woman of... Of what? Felix's voice was ice. Say it, say what you really mean. Silence. You mean a woman who's too dark, too poor, too common for a man like me? Felix leaned forward. That's what you mean, isn't it? Chief Okonkwo shifted. Felix, we're thinking of your reputation, your son's future, Victoria's legacy. Don't you dare use my wife's name to justify bigotry. Felix's voice shook with rage. Victoria would have loved Vivian, because Victoria loved anyone who loved our sons authentically. This isn't about love, another board member interjected. This is about optics, business, reality. Then here's reality, Felix said, standing. I'm making Vivian Michael a permanent part of my sons' lives. She will have legal guardianship if anything happens to me. She will be recognized, respected, protected. You'll lose everything. Then I'll lose everything. Felix's eyes blazed. But I won't lose my soul. I won't teach my sons that love is conditional, that people are disposable, that society's approval matters more than human dignity. He walked out. Half the board followed. Half stayed. Felix didn't look back. The embrace that changed everything. Vivian was in the garden with the boys when Felix found her. She'd seen the interview. Mrs. Adami had shown her on her phone, crying as she watched. When Felix appeared, Vivian stood, her eyes red, her hands trembling. "You didn't have to do that," she whispered. "You're losing everything because of me. I'm gaining everything because of you." Felix crossed the garden, and before either of them could think, before fear or propriety or society could stop them, he pulled her into his arms. Not as an employer, not as a guardian, as a man holding the woman who'd saved his family. Vivian broke. She sobbed into his chest. 8 months of holding it together, of being strong for his sons, of carrying her own grief while mending theirs, all of it came pouring out. And Felix held her, just held her. The boys watched from the porch, their eyes wide. Samto whispered, "Is Daddy hugging Auntie Vivian?" Chitty nodded slowly. I think he's saying thank you." Kelechi smiled. "Good, she deserves a hug." 6 months later. The house was different now. Not perfect, not healed, but alive. The boys thrived. Chitty's grades soared. Kelechi joined the school choir. Samto learned to swim with Vivian beside him every step, patient, present, unafraid. And slowly, carefully, they began calling her something new. Not Auntie Vivian. Mama Vivian. The first time Samto said it, Vivian froze, her eyes wide with panic. But Felix was there. He knelt beside his son and said, "It's okay. You can have 2 mothers, one in heaven, one right here. Love doesn't divide, it multiplies." Vivian wept. But this time, they were tears of healing. One evening, Felix asked Vivian to meet him in the study. When she arrived, he was standing by the window, holding a folder. "I have something to show you," he said quietly. "I've been working on it for 3 months. It's not finished yet, but I need you to see it." He handed her the folder. Vivian opened it, her hands shaking. Inside, architectural plans, legal documents, mission statements. At the top, in bold letters, the Alice and Victoria Foundation. A home for grieving families, counseling, support groups, childcare for single parents, all of it free. Vivian's vision blurred. "You named it after." "After both of them," Felix said. "Because grief shouldn't destroy people, it should transform them, and you've shown me how." He pulled out another document. "I want you to be co-director, not as a favor, not as charity, as a partner, because this work, this mission, it needs someone who understands, someone who's walked through fire and chose to carry light instead of ashes." Vivian looked up at him, tears streaming. "I also want to make you the boys' legal guardian," Felix continued. "If anything happens to me, they need someone who loves them the way you do, someone who won't run." "Felix," it was the first time she'd said his name without Sir or Mr. Toju. "You saved us, Vivian. Let me save you too." She collapsed into his arms, and this time it wasn't grief holding them together. It was hope, purpose, love reborn from ashes. Felix whispered against her hair, "There's one more thing, something I haven't told anyone, not even the boys." Vivian pulled back, searching his eyes. "What is it?" "Victoria left something behind, a letter. And it's addressed to the woman who would help me raise our sons." Felix's hands trembled as he retrieved the envelope from his safe. It was sealed with wax, Victoria's personal seal, the one she used for important documents. On the front, in her elegant handwriting, "To the woman who loves my boys when I cannot." Vivian stared at it, unable to move. She knew. "Victoria had a premonition," Felix said quietly. "3 weeks before she died, she wrote this. She made me promise to give it to the woman who would help me raise our sons. She said I'd know her when I saw her." He handed Vivian the envelope. "She was right. I knew from the moment I saw you playing with them." With shaking hands, Vivian broke the seal and unfolded the letter. Felix watched as her eyes moved across the page, tears spilling freely. "Read it aloud," Felix whispered. Please, I've never opened it. I was waiting for you. Vivian's voice cracked as she began. Dear sister in sorrow, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. It means my boys are crying at night. It means Felix is drowning in grief. It means my house has forgotten how to laugh. But it also means you came. I don't know your name, I don't know your story, but I know your heart because you stayed. You didn't run when my sons tested you. You didn't flinch when they spoke my name. You didn't try to erase me to make room for yourself. Thank you. Thank you for teaching my Bobbies that love doesn't end with death. Thank you for showing Felix that his heart can heal without betraying mine. Thank you for being brave enough to walk into our broken home and help us remember how to breathe. I need you to know something. You are not a replacement. You are a continuation. God knew I couldn't finish raising my sons, so he sent you to help complete the work. That's not theft. That's grace. Please don't be afraid to love them fully. Don't hold back because you think it dishonors me. The greatest honor you can give me is to help my sons thrive. Let them call you whatever name brings them comfort. Let Felix lean on you when the weight gets too heavy. Let yourself be loved by the family you saved. And please, dear woman, forgive yourself for whatever wound brought you to us. I don't know your pain, but I know it's deep, because only broken people understand how to heal the broken. Your past does not disqualify you from this love. It prepares you for it. Live boldly, love fearlessly. And when my sons ask about me, and they will, tell them their mother loved them so much that even from heaven, she made sure they'd never be alone. Thank you for being our angel when we needed one most. With eternal gratitude. Victoria Toju. The room was silent, except for their crying. Vivian clutched the letter to her chest, her whole body shaking. She gave me permission. She gave me permission to love them. She gave us both permission, Felix said, pulling her close. Permission to heal, permission to live, permission to build something beautiful from the ruins. The Alice and Victoria Foundation opened on a sunny Saturday morning in Lekki. The building was beautiful, painted in warm yellow and cream, with a garden full of flowers and a playground where children could run free. Inside, counseling rooms, support groups, a library, childcare services, and a wall of remembrance where families could honor those they'd lost. Vivian stood at the podium, wearing a flowing traditional iro and buba in royal blue, a gift from Felix. Beside her, Felix held Samto's hand. The other boys sat in the front row, beaming with pride. The crowd was massive, hundreds of people whose lives had been touched by grief. Vivian took a breath and spoke. My name is Vivian Michael. 3 years ago, I lost my daughter, Alice. I thought my life was over. I thought grief would destroy me forever. She looked at Felix, at the boys, at the building behind her. But grief didn't destroy me. It transformed me. It led me to a family who needed me as much as I needed them. It taught me that love doesn't end when someone dies. It simply finds new ways to grow. This foundation exists because 2 women, Alice and Victoria, taught us that loss doesn't have to be the end of the story. It can be the beginning of purpose, of healing, of grace. To every parent here who's lost a child, every child who's lost a parent, every person carrying grief they think will kill them, you are not alone. And you are not broken beyond repair. You are simply learning a new way to love. The crowd erupted in applause and tears. That evening, Felix found Vivian in the Foundation's memorial garden, kneeling before 2 trees they'd planted side by side. One plaque read, Alice Vivian Michael, Forever 3, Forever Loved. The other, Victoria Toju, beloved wife and mother, her love lives on. The boys were playing nearby, their laughter echoing through the garden, free, unrestrained, fully alive. Felix sat beside Vivian on the grass. You did it. You turned grief into grace. We did it, Vivian corrected. All of us together. Samto ran over and threw himself into Vivian's lap. Mama Vivian, can we plant a flower for Alice too? Vivian's heart swelled. Of course, baby, we'll plant a whole garden for her. Chitty and Kelechi joined them, and soon all 5 of them were sitting in the grass, covered in dirt, planting flowers as the sun set over Lagos. Felix looked at his family, his sons alive and thriving, Vivian strong and radiant, the ghosts of two women who loved them all, present in every laugh, every memory, every flower. Victoria was right, Felix said softly. Love doesn't divide, it multiplies. Vivian smiled through her tears. And grief doesn't have to destroy, it can create. They sat together as darkness fell, not afraid of the shadows, because they'd learned something profound. Light is most beautiful after you've survived the dark. If you made it to the end of this story, you're not just a viewer, you're family now. Because this story wasn't just entertainment. This was about something real, something raw, something so many of us carry in silence, grief, judgment, and the courage to love again. Drop your comment below, and if this story touched you, if it made you cry, if it gave you hope, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone who needs to hear that healing is possible. Hit that like button if you believe love is stronger than loss. Subscribe to TJAY Story, because we're not just telling stories here. We're building a community of people who refuse to let pain have the final word. And share this video, tag someone who's grieving, someone who feels stuck, someone who thinks they'll never smile again. Let them know laughter can return, love can grow, and grief, when faced with courage, becomes grace. Thank you for trusting me with your time, your emotions, and your heart. You are not alone. You are not broken beyond repair. And your story, just like Felix and Vivian's, is not over yet. From my heart to yours. TJY Story. Comment Grace if this story changed something in you. See you in the next story. And remember, love always wins.